Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Threezero DLX scale Iron Man figure unboxing and review video. Today we are taking a look at none other than the Mark 50 from Avengers Infinity War. Now I do have to say a huge thank you to Threezero for sending along this production sample. If you are looking to order your very own Mark 50, I have popped the link to Threezero's own website down in the description below. While you're there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon and join button for more info on Justin's Collection plus the channel membership. As for the box art, it's classy as always, up top Infinity Saga, down below Avengers Infinity War and Mark 50. We also have an image of the figure itself front and center. On the side of the box, Iron Man Mark 50. On the back, a bunch of warnings and legal info. If you flip open the front cover, the Mark 50 again, plus a couple of accessories, and then the figure inside. Now, Threezero, kind of like Hot Toys did, are going to be releasing a separate accessory pack. When that comes out, fingers crossed I can get my hands on that as well, because I'm curious to see what host of accessories Threezero have in the works for their Mark 50. First in-hand impressions, yeah, this guy might be small, but there's a ton of metal here. He feels suitably hefty. What we are going to do now, though, is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Starting off with the display base first, it is done in the same style as the rest of the line, with Infinity Saga sculpted in up top and Iron Man Mark 50 up the front. You do have a multi-jointed flight pole arm and the joints are really nice and sturdy. Then up top, this little peg that actually slots into Iron Man's behind and locks him in place nice and securely. When I say Iron Man's behind, I mean it. That piece literally plugs into his butt, but it's really sturdy and it's nowhere near as ugly as a waist clamp, so yeah, I'm all for it. Now he does come with this bladed weapon, the small blade up on top, the long blade down below cast in translucent plastic. The silver is nicely painted, so too is the red and the gold. Plus, he actually comes with some hands specifically sculpted to hold it, unlike the Hot Toys one where you had to make do with the articulated finger hands to try and get him to hold onto this weapon. Not an easy feat, and I'm glad you don't have to do that here. One of my favorite weapons with the Mark 50, and of course the one that he's impaled with, the Katar, you get two of them. One for either side. The sculpt is really sharp, so please be careful not to prick yourself. It's pre-attached to the hand, so in order to install it, you simply slide it onto the ball joint. I like the gold, it's nice and metallic. Plus there is a little bit of blue in those crevices, which can't have been easy to paint. Those lines are tiny. You do get 4 blast effects in total, 2 of the longer ones as well as 2 of the smaller ones. Now, I never really loved the sculpt for these DLX blast effects. They're kinda chonky, kinda geometric. They look very toyetic, is what I'm trying to say. I do like the color. They're cast in translucent plastic, and yes, that does most of the heavy lifting. You also have some shading up on top where the blast would be coming out of the repulsor, or of course his feet. Speaking of which, you do get a pair of hands where the repulsor section is a peg port, so you can plug them in, and a pair where the repulsor is fully painted in a nice metallic silver. I do like the choice of red here. It's this deep, rich red, and the gold is nice and saturated. What we are going to do now, though, is get the Mark 50 itself out here. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. Never before has the phrase Mini Hot Toys been as relevant as it is here. This guy pretty much embodies that perfectly and even does something slightly better than the 1/6 scale version. I never thought I'd actually be saying that about a shrunk down 1/10 scale Iron Man suit, but yeah, here we are. He is that good. He's nice and heavy, there's diecast here, and the engineering is awesome. The proportions are on point. It looks like an actual dude in a suit. He's not too big, he's not too bulky, and the gaps aren't huge either. Plus, the paint on top is gorgeous. Threezero, they've got a pretty good track record when it comes to painting stuff, and yeah, that holds true here as well. Up close and personal, kicking things off with the helmet first. Yeah, that's the Mark 50. I love the sleekness, I love how it comes down to a very thin point, and I love the color. Now, this suit in the movie was more of a satin finish, where Threezero have gone slightly more glossy, but they have turned down the saturation on the red just a little. That works for me. It's slightly darker and it gives this suit a much more mature look and feel. Now, the gold is slightly more saturated as compared to their previous figures, still works for me, and there is a bunch of shiny metallic silver. Overall, yeah, I'm really happy with the helmet. Now, it does have LED light-up eyes and an LED light-up arc reactor, but unfortunately, down here in Australia, button cell batteries are still illegal. That means I can't try the light-up feature, but when you pop the batteries in, yeah, I'm sure just like the other figures, they light up a treat. I mean, that's just me guessing, but Threezero have a proven track record, so this time I'm more than happy to give them the benefit of the doubt. You do have some opening flaps around the back on some nice smooth hinges. You also have some sculpted and painted detail underneath those flaps, plus when you close them it looks nice and smooth and seamless. Speaking of smooth and seamless, that's pretty much how I describe this entire figure. Now, the shoulder pads are articulated, and yes, you do have some sculpted detail for the joints, both for the shoulder and the little piece that it plugs into. It's also painted in silver, but when you close everything up, the gaps are minimal. On the Hot Toys figure, the gaps are a little bit more obvious, especially down here for the legs, which we'll get to, but for the most part, this guy cleans up really well. Now, one of the more interesting things about the Mark 50, at least for me, is that all of these blue sections are, in the movie, mini arc reactors. That means in figure format, if you're lighting up the chest and the eyes, technically you should light all of these up as well. So that kind of leaves us in an awkward spot because they don't light up, they're fully painted. At the very least, the paint looks good, it's a nice metallic blue, but it doesn't match with the arc reactor that's translucent plastic. Now, you do have some sculpted detail behind it, it looks good, don't get me wrong, but if you're painting the mini ones, I feel like you should offer a swap out chest plate with a painted arc reactor, and a swap out faceplate with painted eyes, in case, like me, you can't use the LEDs. As I mentioned earlier, there is an upcoming accessory pack, and that means those accessories have to have some way of attaching onto the figure. And yes, they do. You simply slide off the forearm, there's this little peg connector, and I assume that's what those pieces are going to slide onto. We will, of course, be trying that out when I eventually get the Mark 50 accessory pack. This is Threezero, so of course there's some very clever hidden engineering. You do have multiple joints in the torso, you can kind of see most of them, but one is super cleverly disguised behind his chest plate. When you rotate the figure, as you can see, the top piece is the only thing moving. That is genius. I would have loved to have seen that from Hot Toys, but Threezero quite clearly have paid a little bit more attention to detail when it comes to engineering. One of the biggest complaints about the Hot Toys figure was this gap right here. Some people even got replacement panels to try and shorten the gap, but no need with Threezero, they've done that work for you. There's also some really clever hidden engineering. This panel will slide forward and drop down. So it looks good when it's up, but it also gives you a maximum range of motion and, fingers crossed, no paint chipping. Speaking of the paint, as I said with the rest of the figure, it looks really good. It's this nice, deep, rich metallic red, it's slightly glossy, the gold is nice and saturated, there's a decent amount of silver in the panel lines, plus of course those metallic blue arc reactors. Now, I still would have loved to have seen a bunch of chipping and dry brushing all over the suit, just to make it look slightly more realistic, just like we saw. I know I keep comparing this to the Hot Toys one, but yeah, just like we saw in 1/6 scale. Coming down to the calves, they do come into a nice thin point because this is a super sleek suit. Then on the underside, his boots are fully sculpted with tread, and of course the peg port, so you can use the blast effects. For a quick side-by-side comparison, here we have the Threezero DLX Mark 50 on the left, and the Threezero DLX Mark 3 on the right. As you can see, Mark 50 is a little taller. He's a lot sleeker, the colour is a little bit darker and slightly more glossy. Now, it's going to be down to personal preference which suits you prefer, which suits you decide to pick up. I personally am more inclined to pick up the old school Iron Man suits like the Mark 1 to 7, but yeah, can't deny, the 50 looks pretty cool here too. Plus, Threezero have shown that they're not just sticking to one lineup, they're going super diverse with their Iron Man figures. Next up, here we have the ZD Toys Mark 43, and just like when we did this comparison with the Mark 3 and the Mark 43 and Iron Patriot, to nobody's surprise I'm sure, yes, they are in scale. The Mark 50 is ever so slightly taller. Now, don't let looks deceive you, even though they look similar in quality, they definitely aren't. In hand, you can feel that the Mark 50 is heavier. There's actual real metal here, it's quite weighty, the engineering is impeccable. Whereas ZD Toys is more like your traditional action figure, it's a little bit more limited. It's nowhere near as high-end as the DLX line. Going over articulation, do bear in mind this is my personal copy of the figure, so I'm going to be a little bit more careful. Starting off with the helmet, it is articulated independently to the neck, looking forward to there, looking back to there, swivel and pivot side to side. Now the arms do go up. I would suggest moving these shoulder pads out first to avoid paint chipping. Going up to there, forward and back, butterfly joint at the shoulder that also hinges up and down. You do have a swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow that gets you past 90, plus of course a ball joint for the wrist peg. The torso does crunch forward a crazy amount, going back just a little, swivel and pivot side to side. Now the legs do drop down, as you can see this side is now a lot lower than this one. I do like that it doesn't drop down at the hips, it drops down behind this armor plate that is also articulated so you can move it out of the way for maximum range of motion and fingers crossed, no paint chipping. The legs will go forward to there, they will go out to there, swivel at the upper thigh, double bend at the knee that does get you past 90, a hinge and pivot down here for the foot, plus of course, toe articulation. Wrapping up on the Threezero DLX scale Mark 50. Now, every time I approach one of these videos, I try and think, is this the best in the lineup to date? With this guy, the answer is a very simple and very easy yes. Yes, he is. He's got the best engineering, he's got the best articulation, the best paint, and arguably the best sculpt as well. He's very sleek looking, the proportions are excellent, his neck isn't too short like I thought the Mark III was, plus he comes with the most accessories, and there is an upcoming accessory pack so you can get even more weaponry for your Mark 50. Therefore, I see this guy as an absolute win. And no, I'm not just saying nice things because they sent me this production sample. I genuinely really like this figure. Like I said earlier, I think he does some things even better than the Hot Toys 1/6 scale Mark 50. And that's high praise because I really like that figure. Now, I do have to say a massive thank you to Threezero for sending me this production sample. If you would like to order your very own smaller scale diecast Mark 50, the link for that is in the description below. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.